So here's a video that's a little bit out of the norm, but I saw this small video and it pisses me off. So let's talk about it. Okay, so I was just hanging out on Twitter when I noticed Time magazine release a small clip about carbon emissions. Let's play most of it. I apologize in advance for the length. It's about 1:20, but I want to make sure you have all the context before I lose my mind. Let's jump in. Let's start with the scary number they show at the end of my clip there. 635,000 metric tons. That sure sounds like a lot, right? And before I make this next point, I just want to point out that this video pissed me off so much that it made me do math. Anyway, when you take this scary looking number in context, you'll find that inhalers are responsible for, get this, 0.0017% of total global carbon emissions. Global carbon emissions stand at 37.1 billion tons in 2018. And it wasn't people struggling to breathe who were responsible for the vast majority of those emissions. A lot of it was due to fossil fuel companies. The same people who have spent decades trying to frustrate climate research so that they could keep collecting that sweet paper money. The top 20 fossil fuel companies have contributed 480 billion tons of carbon dioxide since 1965, and 1/3 of total carbon and methane emissions. Not to mention, alright, I'm about to mention it. Those same fossil fuel companies have helped contribute to higher rates of, quote, infant mortality, lower birth weight, deficits in lung function, respiratory symptoms, childhood asthma, developmental disorders, and cancer, end quote. You know, the things you're now castigating for needing an inhaler to breathe. Basically, you're blaming the sick for something that's often done to them by mega-rich corporations, who are also some of the largest contributors to global greenhouse gas emissions. When I mentioned my hate for this clip on Twitter, Lizzie, who happens to live in Namibia, which is a country in Southwest Africa, mentioned something else interesting, that the inhalers that use CFCs are less expensive, which in turn forces the poorest among them to purchase the less environmentally friendly version over the greener alternative. So now you've got a situation where these super rich corporations and individuals make a lot of money off fossil fuels. They use a portion of that money to lobby governments and muddy climate research so that they can continue to make money. These emissions help fuel a rise in medical conditions such as asthma. Then when the crisis is on our front step, places like Time blame the sick and poorest people for their minuscule contribution to greenhouse gas emissions, when they buy the medicine they require to freaking breathe, instead of putting the focus on the largest emitters. Not only the largest emitters, but the ones who actually have the financial resources to do something about it. It's mind-blowingly short-sighted. I'm not saying we shouldn't try to develop technology that would reduce the emissions of these inhalers, but it's rather low on the priority list, and certainly not something I think Time should be wasting time, no pun intended, on. When we have very large, very rich corporations and individuals that are contributing far more to climate change and have actively been working against fixing the problem for decades. Let's stop blaming the poor and the sick and start focusing on the real problem.
So Obama's talking about all of this with the global warming and that, and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay? It's a hoax.
This is a rap about a MAGA hat. The one that always taken by a Democrat. Trump's policies are so grand. Watching the economy expand. So take your friends to a MAGA crowd where the love of freedom is found. Let them conform to the Trump plan. Ask that Glenn Beck, he's now a MAGA man.